So, last night was an absolute brilliant treat for libertarians like myself because we got to see someone go for the left and the right against each other in an absolute brilliant mudslinging event of stupidity. Now, as per usual, the internet takes basically two sides on this. Are you part of Farage's group, or are you part of Brand's group? And there's all this mudslinging about, the guy with the cane was a brother of an MP of UKIP, and the woman with the blue hair was a major member of the Socialist Worker newspaper. And frankly, I don't give a damn about both because I hate both sides. I don't like Nigel and I don't like Brand. Because they both have completely delusional, or at least at the least, misled sides on what we should do for the entire world. None of them's got it right. They might have good ideas, but ideas really are shit if you don't have any backbone to support your points. So to start off with Mr. Brand, because he's the guy who started off, I think I finally figured him out last night, and I'll get to that later, but I just find it so irritating how this guy has sort of gained so much reputation over the past year or so, and yet he has basically no backbone behind any of his points. Throughout most of the question time, he was basically acting much like a politician. He was avoiding and holding himself back from answering questions, and instead basically doing things like appealing to the crowds by saying something cool, and shouting out a load of sound bites. This isn't a very good way of debating. Oh, why don't you want to vote? Well, give us something to vote for! Yeah! Now, he did point out a lot of good stuff, but in a sense it's sort of like George Carlin, in that if you're not actually basing it behind any firm, solid philosophical beliefs, then it just floats away in the wind and doesn't last. Now, Nigel, on the other hand, pointed out some terrible facts on immigration, as usual. I think that some of my libertarian friends basically got drunk by playing the Nigel Farage wrong facts drinking game. But basically the first main killer for me, which was absolutely brilliant because he pointed out, or he stated exactly what I wanted him to state, was that he said that because of immigrants coming into the country, you get a scarcity of primary school places and NHS places and all that sort of shit. No, the reason why, Nigel, that there is a scarcity for these things is because they're centrally planned. There's basically a monopoly on healthcare in this country, there's basically a monopoly on education. Police, the use of force, taxation, all that sort of stuff is centrally planned. And when you have that, it creates scarcity because central planning does nothing. Look at any country in the world. Any country in the world that is centrally planned. Soviet Union's the biggest one. Okay, it never accomplishes anything because the means of production are taken away from individuals. Why is there not a scarcity of things like supermarkets or solicitors or hairdressers? Because those are all privately owned by individuals who are serving the people who they want to serve. So it's not an argument for getting rid of immigrants, it's an argument for getting rid of those forceful-natured things called NHS, the state schools, the police service, etc. Anything that, you can't do and you can't make a profit out of should be removed. And he always points out sort of these buzzwords like, we want to streamline and we want to control and we want a sensible immigration policy. How about no immigration policy whatsoever? How about you allow the markets to decide who's going to come into this country and who's going to do a good job? I point out the very obvious that people have probably sidestepped, which is that if a government cannot handle open immigration, why the hell do you think that it's going to handle controlled immigration? Do you really think that Nigel Farage, if he ever gets into power, is going to do a good job with that? I don't think so. To which Russell responds by getting a round of applause that was completely undeserved because it pointed out a load of PC obviousness. And then the fun really started when the guy with the cane at the front said that, why are you picking on UKIP, and getting really, really angry. And I don't think that, all the criticism of UKIP is particularly fair, but this guy is bloody rancid. And it just makes me think about how the UKIP party, many of the people in the UKIP party, seem to go along this excuse that we're the underdogs, and we're the ones who are being, pushed down upon by the big, bad establishment. And so therefore all of our points are right, or at least by the end of it, the ends justify the means. It's a delusion. All parties are quack and easily corruptible, so don't fall into this thing of, the vote trap. And again, Russell seems to add to this idea of, going for the source, but he doesn't substantiate his points yet again. I can very well explain the reasons why I don't vote. I don't have to just go, oh, David Cameron, give us something to vote about. Woo! But of course Russell doesn't have any concrete philosophy to back his points up, because if he did, he wouldn't have anywhere near the amount of Twitter and YouTube followers that he does. And then, as of course on Question Time for the past 3 or 4 months, we move on to the obvious topic of the NHS. and both of them were still pretty ridiculous. Brand was pretty obvious, you know, oh, we need to keep the NHS, we need to take money from people and give it to the NHS. But I was absolutely stunned at how Labour-like Nigel Farage has become. Because in the past 2 years ago, he was arguing that we need to create some sort of financial return on the NHS, and now he's basically fallen into his party, goading and gagging for the middleman, basically saying, well, all these private endeavours we've done in the past are crap, and we need to save the NHS. I'm just like, good God, why do people think that this guy is the answer? And then finally we get to education, and this is basically anarchy. Everybody has a different view, everyone wants the best for themselves, and so on, rah rah rah. And Russell Brand and a few others make this point of, we don't need things like grammar schools, all that we need is good schools for everyone. I can relate to this because I used to like this idea, going for sort of the Finnish system of making every school, equally adequate to pass people through schools. But you can't just magic up a good school. Everything has a cost to it, and education and schooling are very expensive. Plus, if every school is great, then no school is great, and especially not if the government monopolises on it. And then the point that everybody forgot about last night was, why do we even need every single child to go to school? Maybe some are better at just learning creatively on their own. Maybe some of them do need, some form of education behind themselves. Why do even those who go to school need to learn loads of subjects that they will never use in the rest of their life? Surely that's a huge waste of resources. When someone has to do something, they will figure out a way to do it, no matter whether or not they were schooled as a child or not. Just saying, I was never taught anything about filmmaking or economics when I was in school, and what do you think I specialise in now? So yeah, last night was a lot of fun, but please, if you haven't really made your mind up, if you're pretty confused, don't fall into this whole trap of you've got to pick one of two sides. They're both basically the same. They both want some form of control. Russell Brand seems to make himself out like he's an anarcho-syndicalist, yet he wants massive taxation of businesses and corporations. Nigel is at the very least a very sly fox, and Russell Brand is at the very least very misled. So thank you for watching, guys. I hope you liked Question Time last night, and next week I will hopefully be making a video response to Libertarian Socialist rants about his new video on capitalism. So look forward to seeing you then.